Alright, I'm back. So, right now with Trump, there's a current investigation where the special counsel Jack Smith is actually looking through Trump's texts through Twitter. And I think the last part kind of sums up that they don't really know what's going on yet. And like I said, it's just unfolding. Alright, it's unclear exactly what the direct messages that were obtained say or what the other data the special counsel's office received. The search warrant obtained by prosecutors required Twitter to turn over IP addresses associated with the account, unpublished draft tweets, and the account's Twitter search history from October 2020 to January 2021. Um, yeah, so the indictment that charged Trump last month with using unlawful means to remain in power after he lost the 2020 election repeatedly referred to the former president's tweets. Prosecutors from the special counsel's office, for example, include tweets in which Trump pressured Vice President Mike Pence to reject electoral college votes before Congress, and tweets urging his supporters to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. So, there's a lot more that could actually be involved in the text messages once all this is done unfolding. And it's really good that they're doing this. It's a little weird. Um, yeah, moving on. So, obviously, Democrats have no plans because most of what they have done is like kind of goes against their voter base sometimes. And overall, I think we have older presidents to represent the older nation. Maybe that's probably why the demographics in our civics is like that. Or it's just like, since it's their job, they can never retire. But, anyways, yes, age concerns for the president, and obviously they have no plan B because nobody likes Kamala Harris. So, yeah, we're definitely getting Trump this next coming election. This is terrifying. And, we either get like literal fascist or status quo genocide Biden. So, take your pick. Anyways, speaking of, we have this horrible situation, and I think I mostly pulled this up for the comment section, but we'll see. Basically, people being detained, thought to be Hamas, but mostly Gaza is destroyed anyways. They're all internal refugees, so it's just like anyone could be suspected since they just want them gone anyways.
Footage has emerged from Gaza apparently showing dozens of Palestinian men detained and forced to strip by Israeli forces. The men are seen sitting cross-legged or kneeling in several different locations and being transported on the back of military vehicles. These pictures were filmed in northern Gaza, not far from Gaza City.
Normally,
Israel has not confirmed who the men are, but says it is interrogating.
But there isn't like the pause button right now, as you can see. But what's going on here? Can I open the comments at least?
Israeli army spokesman Daniel Hagari said, and I quote, "We are investigating to see who is linked to Hamas and who is not."
Yeah, so
earlier I asked our correspondent Tanya.
Assume that that's their constant excuse. We just do this for the threat. We destroy you for national security.
In Jerusalem, what more she knew about the images of the detainees.
Obviously, Hamas needs to be destroyed, but this is not the way. At least they're not bombing them, I guess, which is odd. It's probably something I should have pulled up. One of these was a journalist, I believe, that was being detained. Alright, so most of these comments are just like, wow, it's war, get over it, and wow, this is a crime, and just posting like generic, cold, logical facts that could be true about how this is just how war is and how it's violent. Yeah, like this dude. I'm surprised by people who are surprised that war is violent. Like, what kind of comment is that? Like, obviously, these people don't care about the broader history of the situation. Like, I can kind of understand that. So, obviously, on October 7th, there was terrorists involved. Like, we know that. So, I don't know why. Wow. Jeez. Alright. So, mass detaining via tank point, which you could find at angles of this story that are doing that.
You said the Israeli army
Hold
wouldn't
on.
confirm some reports that Israel might consider
So
to use the Kerem Shalom crossing for
likely
screening of.
not happening. Alright, so moving on. So this is what Biden could do with a simple phone call. And this is what I found interesting about how the Reagan administration handled what Israel was doing at the time. So let's see. I believe this is uh, fighting against Israel. So Reagan demands an end to attacks in a blunt phone call to begin. And we see that Biden doesn't really put much effort into trying to stop this chaos. So this is the irony that a Republican president can actually get something done, at least back then, when they cared about like anything, I suppose. Not saying it was good to have a Republican president, just this is a good move. That's all I'm saying. Okay, chronology of crisis about 6 a.m. Midnight Wednesday, New York Times. Israelis begin bombing West Beirut as raids continue. Lebanon's Prime Minister Sharif al-Wazan tells Philip C. Habib, the special American envoy, that the talks cannot continue. 2 p.m., 8 a.m., New York Times. The Israeli cabinet meets. A message from President Reagan arrives expressing outrage and reportedly threatening to halt the Habib mission. The cabinet decides to end the raids and orders new ones only if they are, quote, essential. 4 p.m., 10 a.m., New York Times. President Reagan tries to, for hour to call Mr. Begin, but cannot get through. 4:50 p.m., 10:50 a.m., New York Times. King Fahd of Saudi Arabia calls Mr. Reagan. 4 p.m., 10 a.m., New York Times. A new ceasefire goes into effect in West Beirut. 5:10 p.m. So as opposed to a humanitarian pause, which is kind of fucked up that it's even has that term, humanitarian. But yeah, Mr. Reagan reaches Mr. Begin for a 10-minute phone call. 5:50 p.m., 11:40 a.m., New York Times. Mr. Begin calls President Reagan to say that complete ceasefire has been ordered. Washington, August 12th. President Reagan expressed outrage to Prime Minister Menachem began today over Israel's latest bombing raids in West Beirut, saying the attacks had resulted in needless destruction and bloodshed. It was the sharpest statement by Mr. Reagan since the start of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon 9 weeks ago. Larry Speakes, the deputy White House press secretary, said Mr. Reagan had been shocked by Israeli attacks on West Beirut. Mr. Reagan voiced his feelings directly to Mr. Begin, according to Mr. Speakes. Mr. Speakes said the Israeli actions had threatened the efforts by Philip C. Habib, the special American envoy, to end the fighting in Lebanon and arranged for the withdrawal of 6,000 to 900 Palestinian guerrillas trapped in West Beirut. In the last 48 hours, Mr. Habib's peace plan seemed on the verge of success. Massive military action. So, this is simplified that a simple phone call got this to take place, but I think to bring this up, as I've seen other people bring this up that Biden could do, it's just simple acts that you could get the ball rolling Because obviously, like, it takes a lot more than just saying, hey, stop. But, anyways, Mr. Speaks asked whether Mr. Reagan had shouted out to Prime Minister, declined to comment. Mr. Speaks read a White House paper statement to reporters after the morning in which President Reagan sent an urgent message to Mr. Reagan, then spoke twice with the Israeli leader and received a call from King Fahd of Saudi Arabia over the crisis. U.S. officials are stunned. American officials, including apparently Mr. Reagan, were stunned by not only the scale of Israeli air attacks, but also the possibility that Mr. Habib's peace proposal could fall apart because of them. As the Israeli attacks took place, State Department officials said Lebanon's Prime Minister Sharaf al-Wazam told Habib in Beirut that the talks could not continue under the blackmail and pressure of the raids. Habib couldn't continue the talks. One State Department official said the point was conveyed that he simply couldn't go on. The talks had to come to a halt. It was impossible to continue to play our role in these circumstances. Unusually blunt statement. Officials denied reports from Israeli that Mr. Reagan had warned Mr. Begin and Mr. Habib would return to Washington if the raids continued. Wow, of course they did. The unusually blunt White House statement said, quote, the president was shocked this morning when he learned of the new heavy Israeli bombardment of West Beirut. As a result, the president telephoned Prime Minister began concerning the most recent bombing and shelling in Beirut. The statement said Mr. Reagan then expressed his outrage. Quote, he emphasized that Israel's actions halted Ambassador Habib's negotiations for the peaceful resolution of the Beirut crisis when they were at the point of success, the statement said, and goes on to say, the result has been more needless destruction and bloodshed. The statement continued, quote, the president made clear that it is imperative that the ceasefire in place be observed absolutely in order for negotiations to proceed. We understand the Israeli cabinet has approved a new ceasefire, which is in effect. It must hold. Asked if Mr. Reagan had threatened to suspend American arms aid to take other retaliation, Mr. Speaks replied, quote, I won't discuss that. He also declined to discuss Mr. Reagan's response. So all we know is that Reagan did this phone call, but we don't get to know any of the details, I guess. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. A State Department official said, however, that no direct threats had been made in the telephone calls. Frank and straightforward. I kind of doubt that, honestly. Like, the fact that they have to say that. Like, I think we would have had to add that some drama would have happened and you wouldn't have had to add this direct statement. Like, unless everything is just that diplomatic, which, you know, people have their opinions, so I sort of doubt it was this straightforward. A White House aide said Mr. Reagan's phone conversations with Mr. Reagan were his toughest yet. He used frank and straightforward language, end quote. During his conversations, Mr. Reagan was seated at a desk in the Oval Office. Secretary of State George P. Shultz, James A. Baker III, the White House Chief of Staff, and Robert C. McFarlane, the Deputy Assistant to the President of the National Security Affairs, were nearby, according to White House officials. In a chronology of the morning's events, Mr. Speaks and other White House officials said Mr. Reagan had received reports from Mr. Habib and Israeli shellings had brought the talks to a halt. Mr. Habib reported that the attacks had prevented him from meeting the Lebanese intermediaries serving as his contacts with the Palestine Liberation Organization, an angrily worded message. Mr. Reagan then sent an angrily worded message to Mr. Begin through the United States Ambassador in Israel, Samuel W. Lewis. Because Mr. Begin was in Israeli Parliament, the message was not delivered personally. Quote, the President expressed in the message generally what he expressed here, Mr. Speaks said, referring to the White House statement. Between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m., Mr. Reagan tried to phone Mr. Begin again, but the phone call could not be completed. Mr. Speaks said, In the meantime, King Fahd of Saudi Arabia called Mr. Reagan at 10:50 a.m., quote, expressing his concerns over the situation in West Beirut, according to Mr. Speaks. At 11:10 a.m., about 10 minutes after the latest ceasefire took effect, Mr. Reagan reached Mr. Begin and spoke for 10 minutes. Israel orders a ceasefire. Shortly before the phone call, we had learned that an order had gone out to cease the bombings in West Beirut. End quote. Mr. Speaks said at 11:40 a.m. Mr. Begin phoned the president back. Mr. Begin, okay. Quote, the information contained in this call was that a complete ceasefire had been ordered, Mr. Speaks said. Before today's Israel attacks, United States officials expressed hope that Mr. Habib's efforts would soon result in the withdrawal of the PLO from Lebanon. So, we see that Joe Biden is not doing anything to really do that at all. You know, he even tried multiple times. Like, most people, like, maybe they'll call twice, and it's like, nah. Alright, so, I don't know how true this is. I feel like this is kind of insulting almost. But, anyways, Joe Biden. Without Israel, Jews wouldn't be safe anywhere. So I feel like this almost makes America sound like it's not safe anymore. Unless this is implying Palestinian support means that anti-Semitism in America is just rampant, which is just bullshit. But I can see that rhetoric would be the new anti-Muslim attack. Alright. American President Joe Biden has re-pledged his commitment to supporting Israel in war against a terror group Hamas. He vowed to support Israel military at the Hanukkah reception at the White House on Monday night. Speaking to a packed event of 800 attendees hosted in the East Room alongside First Lady Jill Biden, he said, quote, we continue to provide military assistance until they get rid of Hamas, but we have to be careful. Biden told the guests, who included Holocaust survivors, leaders of the Jewish community, and politicians, that Israel needed to be careful as public opinion of its response in Gaza could shift after Hamas' October 7th massacre. Alright, so I think this is just ridiculous. Like, I don't even want to read this because this is just so sad. And this is supposed to be a speed run anyways. Not so much, but okay, so I don't think this is true flatly on its face, because most of the Jewish state and where we put the Jews as a homeland was based on almost an essentialism. So, for instance, the Balfour Declaration, which I should have read before in my past videos. I have to skip along a little bit to get to what I meant by how this sort of goes against a little bit what Joe was saying. Oh, come on. I don't know why that's all the way at the bottom. Okay. The Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing its support for the establishment of the national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a small minority Jewish population. The declaration was contained in a letter dated the 2nd of November 1917 from the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community, for transmission to the Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. The text of the declaration was published in the press on the 9th of November 1917. Alright. So, skipping ahead. There's some weird language about, like, this is your place and this is my place. And I thought it was pretty weird. Okay, for instance, Zionist leader Chairman Weizmann, later president of the World Zionist Organization and the first president of Israel, moved from Switzerland to the UK in 1904 and met Arthur Balfour, who had just launched his 1905-1906 election campaign after resigning as Prime Minister in a secession arranged by Charles Dreyfus, his Jewish constituency representative. Earlier that year, Balfour had successfully driven the Aliens Act through Parliament with impassioned speeches regarding the need to restrict the wave of immigration into Britain from Jews fleeing the Russian Empire. During this meeting, he asked what Wiseman's objections had been in the 1903 Uganda scheme that Hartzy had supported to provide the proportion of British East Africa to the Jewish people as a homeland. The scheme had been proposed to Hartzell by Joseph Chamberlain, colonial secretary in Balfour's cabinet, following his trip to East Africa earlier in the year, had been subsequently voted down following Hertz's death by the Seventh Zionist Congress in 1905. After 2 years in heated debate in the Zionist organization, Wiseman responded that he believed that English are to London as the Jews are to Jerusalem. Again, that's not exactly like a respectful declaration. It's more like a demographic racism. Alright, hold on, guys. Getting to the next point that I thought was pretty weird on this. Obviously, this is broader points of the supplantation or the destruction of the Palestinian people for the Jewish state. Okay. The national home for the Jewish people versus the Jewish state. The term national home was intentionally ambiguous, having no legal value or precedent in international law, such that its meaning was unclear when compared to other terms such as state. The term was intentionally used instead of state because of opposition to the Zionist program within the British cabinet. According to the historian Norman Ross, the chief architect of the declaration contemplated that the Jewish state would emerge in the time, while the Palestinian Royal Commission concluded that the wording was the outcome of a compromise between those ministers who contemplated the ultimate establishment of the Jewish state and those who did not. Okay, hold on. All right. Lord Robert Cecil, on the 2nd of December 1917, assured an audience that the government fully intended that Judea was for the Jews. Yair Aron opines that Cecil, that the Deputy Foreign Secretary representing the British government as a celebratory gathering of the English Zionist Federation, quote, possibly went beyond his official brief. In saying, he cites Stein, quote, our wish is that Arabian country shall be for Arabs, Armenia for the Armenians, and Judea for the Jews. Alright. So, basically the creation of Israel and broadly, nationally, internationally, was built on essentialism. So, as in safety for everybody, because if it's mixed, then there's drama, and that's the propaganda that, gets everybody divided. So, anyways, my next point is gonna take a bit. Oh, right. So the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, the Jewish police, Israel police, sorry, are actually beating up Jewish protesters who are pro-Palestinian. So, come on. I don't know why this is acting like this. So the video description is, I'm pretty sure this is a pro-Palestinian protest. Oh, sorry. The comment section is actually pretty tame. Um, anyways, Israel police have been filmed attacking Jewish residents of an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood in occupied Jerusalem where they were allegedly called in to take down Palestinian flags. Alright. So, you're not even allowed to speak your piece while the situation is happening. I kind of feel like this has nothing to do with safety for the Jewish people, in as much as whether you're a Zionist or not. So, this whole situation is fucked up. So this is just great. This is just, like, I don't know why they would do this. Why they would use this language other than to be ironic. Okay. Turn Gaza into Auschwitz. Let it become a museum, local Israeli leader claims. Okay. David Azaleh, head of Israeli Mutual Council, proposed sending all of Gazans to refugee camps in Lebanon and flattening the whole strip so it becomes an empty museum like Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. So this is their excuse to probably take the population and move them somewhere else. And this is their scheme to maybe put them in Egypt and use them for the economy, or put them in the tent setup they have for them. Okay. A local body heard in Israel has said that that residents of the Gaza Strip should be sent to refugee camps in Lebanon, and then the region should be desolated and destroyed to serve as a museum resembling Poland's Auschwitz concentration camp, terming the October 7 attack from terror group Hamas as the second Holocaust. Metula Council head David Azulai, while speaking to the local radio channel, said that the Israeli Navy should take the Gaza residents to the shores of Lebanon, from where they can go to refugee camps, after which it should be destroyed and turned into a museum resembling the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. Notably, Auschwitz was a concentration camp established by Nazi Germany in the 1930s. It functioned in this role throughout its existence, and in 1942 it became Europe's largest extermination centers, where the Endlösung der Jüdischen Frage, the final solution to the Jewish question, the Nazi plan to murder European Jews, was carried out. Quote, after October 7th, instead of arguing people to go south, we should direct them to the beaches. The Navy can transport them to the shores of Lebanon, where there are already sufficient refugee camps. Then a security strip should be established from the sea to the Gaza border fence, completely empty. As a reminder of what was once there, it should resemble the Auschwitz concentration camp. That's insane. End quote. Azole said in an interview with the local radio channel. Quote, tell everyone in Gaza to go to the beaches. Navy ships should load the terrorists into the shores of Lebanon. Okay, wow. Again, just flat up, just essentializing the terrorists with the population. Which, anyways, this is awful. The entire Gaza Strip should be emptied and leveled flat, just like in Auschwitz. Let it become a museum, showcasing the capabilities of the State of Israel and dissuading anyone from living in the Gaza Strip. This is what must be done to give them a visual representation, he added. What occurred on October 7th was the second Holocaust. Lebanon already has refugee camps, and that's where they should go, Azuli said. Quote, we should leave Gaza desolate and destroyed to serve as a museum, demonstrating the madness of the people who live there, he added. Hamas launched a barrage of rocket attacks in Israel on Saturday, October 7th, 2023, and also affiliated via group by gunning down civilians on streets and their homes. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed and dozens were kidnapped by Hamas terrorists and taken to Gaza. In a recent 7-day Israeli-Hamas truce, over 80 hostages, including foreign nationals kidnapped in Israel were released by Hamas. Israel released multiple Palestinian prisoners as a part of the truce deal. Meanwhile, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, nearly 19,000 people have been killed in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. So, if you want to say that you don't trust the Hamas run, you could say this is half, and that's still like a crazy amount of people that Israelis have killed in airstrikes and all sorts of shit. Um, this is not comparable to the Holocaust. This is simply like another 9/11, I would say, for them, and their war on terror is just literally bombing everything. But it optically looks good if you weren't showing the chaos that was happening to the Palestinians. Like, obviously Israelis should defend themselves, but this is not the way to do it. Alright. On to my last thing, hopefully. Alright. So, I've read to you guys a little bit about Greg Abbott. How he basically, how his cabinet denied children and people water and food, and were told to go back into the Rio Grande. Like, that was a terrible situation. The border crisis issue is essentially just like there's not enough infrastructure.